Hey there and welcome back. Before we get started, I just wanted to remind viewers to head over to Twitter and Instagram at _the_Rinks to follow along and get exclusive content and announcements regarding the series. Now on that note, we're heading off to New York to visit the many homes of the New York Islanders. Let's go! Hey there, welcome back to Rinks Around the League. I'm your host, Jeff Nash. And on this episode, we're going to cover a lot of ground and visit the homes of the New York Islanders. First, we're going to go to Nassau Coliseum and then to the Barclays Center. Now, this being the 2018-19 NHL season, it's a special one for the Islanders as they split their home games with both their old home, the Nassau Coliseum, and their current home, Barclays Center. They will play at both of these locations while their new home gets built. We're going to first head over to the NYCB Live, home of the Nassau Veterans Memorial Coliseum. We're just going to call it Nassau Coliseum in this episode, in Uniondale, New York. Construction of Nassau Coliseum began on January 20th, 1969 and opened February 11th, 1972 at a cost of $32 million and is owned by the Nassau County, New York. The county paid for the total cost of the arena. Its seating capacity fluctuated, but at its highest, it was 16,250. Now, at the end of the 2015 NHL season, it was the second oldest rink in the league, and it was also the smallest in terms of capacity. Now, it was these factors combined with the fact that the Islanders' lease with the building ran out in 2015 that they had to find a new home. Now, talks between management of the Islanders and the building went on for many years. In fact, between 2010 and 2011, multiple pitches and plans were put forward and discussed or voted on. But ultimately, these plans were either rejected or voted against. And it was because of this that the Islanders organization announced in 2012 that they would be moving to the Barclays Center after the expiration of their lease in 2015. Now, after the team left Nassau Coliseum, it was announced that major renovations would take place. It was decided to renovate the facility and make it a smaller venue for other events like concerts. And in 2015, Nassau undertook a $165 million renovation. Now, what do I like about Nassau Coliseum? Well, much like Joe Louis Arena in Detroit and Rexall Place in Edmonton, these old barns have so much character and history inside them. It was old and small, but with that came an unbelievable intimacy with the ice surface and the game itself. This fundamental aspect gets lost in all of the big modern day rinks being built today. The newer rinks today are massive and arguably house way more amenities than these smaller rinks could ever dream of, and in many ways make the game more enjoyable for the fans. And the trade-off is that you're not as close to the action as you once were back in these old rinks. Another cool thing is in the upper bowl, you had these classic old wooden seats for the fans. You look in those rafters and you see those iconic New York Islanders banners. It's pretty cool. And I don't know if it's an optical illusion because the building's so small, but those banners look absolutely huge. Now, it wasn't the best rink in terms of appearance, location, or amenities, but I think the in-game fan experience made up for that. And the proof is in the pudding because after the team left to head to Brooklyn and the Barclays Center, the commercial flop of the team playing in a building originally designed for basketball became obvious, and it was agreed that the Islanders would return to play half of their regular season home games back at the newly renovated Nassau Coliseum. But speaking of Barclays Center, let's head over there now. Construction of the Barclays Center started on March 11th, 2010, and it opened on September 21st, 2012, at a whopping cost of $1 billion. It is owned by Mikhail Prohorov, the Brooklyn Area Local Development Corporation, a public entity. It is leased to the private entity Brooklyn Events Center, LLC, for $1. And being publicly owned, the financing of the stadium was eligible for tax-exempt bonds, which were issued in 2009 for a total just shy of $511 million. Its scoreboard measures 27 by 16 feet. The seating capacity is 16,514. Average secondary ticket price ranks them 27th in the league at $95. Barclays made a naming rights deal worth $200 million over 20 years. Now, the beginnings of Barclays Center has a little controversy to it. Eminent domain or appropriation, the act of acquiring land regardless if it's sold to the developer, was applied to obtain the necessary land to build the rink. This, of course, was met with some pretty negative feedback, but ultimately the land was granted and the rink was built. Now, Barclays Center was originally built to house the Brooklyn Nets of the NBA. Now, this is important because it's probably the main reason why it has such a bad reputation when it comes to NHL hockey, but we'll get to that. Structurally, it's kind of a cool and unique building. It's kind of designed to match the surrounding Brooklyn area. Now, at first glance, the rusted brown facade that is on the exterior of the building, I didn't understand why they chose that instead of a bright, shiny metal surface like Rogers Place. But it was meant to emulate Brooklyn's brownstone buildings that surround it. And a rooftop garden, green space, sets it apart from the rest of the league. The outside courtyard, or oculus, has this cool video loop and an opening to give it a very unique look. And for a brief moment, there was a Captain America statue outside. Another unique characteristic of Barclays Center is it has no dedicated parking lot. But just like local New Yorkers, you just gotta take the subway. It has a subway stop right on its doorstep. And now if you go inside the lower bowl, it's a very spacious building. And the main concourse and the upper concourse has a very polished look to it. Now remember when I mentioned earlier that it was designed for basketball? Well, that contributes to a lot of the characteristics about the building in an NHL format. Now, when the building gets converted from basketball to ice hockey, the scoreboard doesn't hang over center ice like in every other building in the league. And that's not because of the structural design of the building. It has to do with the layout of where the ice surface actually is. And that's because the scoreboard actually does hang at the center of the building. However, the ice sheet is shifted over just a little bit. So it may not look like it's at the center of the building because it's not over center ice like in every other building, but in fact it is. It's just that the ice surface is over a little bit more. From a building perspective, I think it's a pretty cool and unique building actually. The outside is pretty cool and the rooftop greenery makes it truly unique. But let's head over to the things I don't like about this building. Because this building wasn't originally built for ice hockey, there are a lot of issues with it. First off, the seating. The media boxes, like Nashville, are just section off part of the upper bowl. It's not an ideal situation. But for fans, it gets even worse. Exact numbers vary depending on who you talk to, if they work for Barclays or not, but it's rumored that there are up to 2,700 obstructed view seats in that arena. And some of these seats have totally obstructed views of the ice surface. In some sections, you only see one net. You don't even see the net in front of you. Some of the seats in Barclays don't even give you a view of both nets on the ice surface. And the bowl is a weird layout, to say the least. There's a weird gap between the playing boards and the seating area, and they stick cars in the corners for advertising. It kind of has a European feel to it. This alone automatically bumps them down in terms of popularity in the NHL, and is probably instrumental in the reason why the Islanders aren't doing so well in Brooklyn. Bad seats means low ticket sales. Low attendance means that the games are being split now between Nassau and Barclays to make up that difference. Now, Barclays unfortunately also has a bad reputation when it comes to ice quality, but I know they've been working on that, so hopefully they've improved that. Whew. Now, with all this information, I forgot to mention the future of the Islanders. Now, from what I've read, the Islanders will split their home games between the Barclays Center and Nassau Coliseum through until the 21-22 NHL season. And they'll do that while their new home is being constructed out in Belmont Park. Groundbreaking construction is scheduled for 2019, with completion to be expected in 2021. It will be another $1 billion multi-purpose arena development that will include a 19,000-seat rink for the Islanders. Now, Nassau and Barclays are two completely different rinks, almost on every single level. Now, on one hand, you had Barclays, which was a pretty unique building, but just wasn't built for hockey. And on the other hand, you had Nassau Coliseum, which was old and small, but it was built for hockey. And even though they went through renovations recently, it's still a pretty small rink compared to the other rinks in the NHL. But fans of the Islanders, let me know. What are your thoughts of the newly renovated Nassau Coliseum? Have you been to games in Barclays? What are your thoughts about that rink? And what are your thoughts of the new rink being built out in Belmont Park? Well, that does it for the Islanders. Thanks for joining me. On the next episode is another special place as we head to Madison Square Garden in New York, home of the New York Rangers. As always, follow me on Twitter and Instagram at _the_Rinks, on Facebook at the Rinks, and on YouTube at Rinks Around the League. Hit subscribe and ring that bell. Now, one of the cool things about Barclays is it's built on such a small footprint that they obviously don't have room for parking for fans. So, but they do have parking for, the teams and staff. So, and one of the cool things I've never seen elsewhere is that they have these gigantic elevators for the team buses. So when you're with the team, you drive with a bus and you go into these elevators, and they have two of them, and you'll go down several floors into the ground. And when you come out, there's a gigantic turntable that's on the floor. And because it's so compact down below, the buses come out onto this turntable, and the turntable will actually spin the bus around so it's pointing back at the elevator. And so at the end of the night, the bus just drives straight up into the elevator, goes back up the elevator, and back out in the street and off to the airport. It's pretty cool. I've never seen anything like it.